Lesson 1.1. How do you identify function families and describe transformations of parent functions? Now, looking at our absolute value parent function, we need to be able to identify a couple of transformations. So the only difference between this problem and the parent function that we had was that inside here, I see that I have a plus 2. I need to describe that. So on the inside, I saw an added 2. If you recall from the practice activities that you've done the last few days, on the inside, if it was an added 2, you saw that it shifted to the left 2. So if there's an inside add 2, the inside add 2 told us to shift to the left 2. Well, if adding 2 told us to go to the left 2, what does a minus 2 do? The minus 2 told us to go to the right 2. So I'm going to say that I identify that on the inside, I saw this minus 2. And I know that the inside minus 2 told me to go shift to the right 2. So the inside minus 2 told me to shift right 2. So if it was an inside the absolute value, it told us to move left or right. Now what if it was outside the absolute value? So I see that this one has on the outside you're either adding to. This problem down here says on the outside that you are subtracting to. So let's describe that. So from the activities that you've done the last 2 days, if I was adding 2 on the outside, he made my absolute value go either up or down. So adding the 2 made me shift up 2. Minusing the 2 made me shift down 2. Again, these are all patterns you recognize in the last 2 days that we have done our investigative activities. So we're no longer adding or subtracting. I see that we are multiplying on the outside now by a number. So let's describe that first. So in the last 2 days, we have investigated what it meant to multiply on the outside. Multiplying on the outside tells me I'm doing a vertical something. So we are going to do a vertical, and it's a vertical something. If I multiply things by 2, that means I'm going twice as fast, which means I need to stretch myself twice as far. So this is actually going to be a vertical stretch by 2. If I was multiplying everything by a half, I was going at half the rate, which means I was shrinking. So this is a vertical shrink by a 1/2. So when I added 2 on the outside, it went up 2. When I subtracted 2 on the outside, I went down 2. The outside had a multiply by 2. That told you to vertical stretch by 2. The outside had a multiply half. That meant you needed to vertically shrink by a half. So now we need to look at what these mean just a little bit more. Back up here, I noticed that there's this particular movement that happens. If I went to the right one, I went up 1. Right one, up 1. Right one, up 1. So there is a special movement that happens with the parent function. Every time you go right 1, you ended up going up 1. You went right 1, up 1. So it was right 1, up 1, right 1, up 1 to make your absolute value. Well, now that we are multiplying by 2 or multiplying by a half, that up and over is going to change. So we need to talk about our movements. So it was over 1, up 1, because that's what the parent function says. But now it says that we are multiplying by 2. So if I'm multiplying by 2, that means I need to vertically multiply by 2. So now what am I going to have? You're only vertically multiplying by 2. The horizontal change doesn't change. The vertical got multiplied by 2. 1 times 2 is now 2. So my vertical only. So only my vertical got multiplied by 2. My vertical got multiplied by 2. So this is my new movement. This is still a vertical, but this time I'm not multiplying by 2. I'm supposed to multiply by a half because it's getting multiplied by a half. So my vertical is only going to get multiplied by 1/2. So now what does my movement look like? I am still going over 1 because that's not vertical, that was horizontal. The vertical gets multiplied by half, so I'm no longer going up 1, I'm actually supposed to go up a half. We will practice these more on the next page. We have one more problem we need to look at before we practice these problems. I see on this one, I had to multiply by a negative. So first let's describe that. It's multiplied by a -1 because there's got to be a number next to the negative. So on the outside, I multiplied by a -1. If you remember from our investigation, what this did, it made you reflect across the x-axis.